Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. It's Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and I want to talk about occult today. And so I went into a very fascinating channel by Dr. Fatima, who is, I believe, Palestinian scientist, and she discusses all things science, like the hard science, from the perspective of colonialism and showing how we didn't think that certain political agendas or ideologies permeate science. And this is something that, as a former student of politics and governance, I was exposed to, not in this very context, but the context of basically other things than science infiltrating science. Actually, my thesis proposal that was approved, but then I took a break from academia for obviously reasons. Then I was delving into the actual science of medicines, holistic and conventional medicines, and the philosophy of science, especially the how do we know that we know, epistemic standards. In this department, I got the freedom to do this, and this was basically my way of tackling those issues before I even explore the politics around something or even the occult around something. I try to get at the truth. Okay, it's just my Pluto in the ninth house. Try to get at the truth, um, which will lead to a lot of following consecutive experiences, very fated one probably. And so I would like to talk about this type of discussion where we address the things that are not science, that are involved with science. So this can range right from psychology, for example, when you do astronomy. Um, if you look at the color blue, many Westerners are used to see the color blue as a cold color. Whereas if you look at a star, the color blue just tells us of a higher temperature. Just like if you look at the flame, okay, inside the flame, you would see more blue, outside more yellow and orange. Okay, this psychological bias that we're predisposed to treat blue as cold rather than warm can cause a difficulty in assessing data when we address astronomical information. Okay, so this is how psychology would be involved in astronomy. Okay, another thing is, of course, stuff like sociology or ideologies, and this is heavyweight politics. Okay, I haven't seen all the videos of Dr. Fatima, so it would be very interesting, regardless of your opinion or whatever. It's just something that you want to get to know. And yes, absolutely, predisposition, which is like psychology, enters scientific bias, but also there are things that are downright eugenics or downright ideology that has nothing necessarily to do with science. One such thing that I ran into, and those of you who know my story, but they don't know what's energy, I was basically threatened by a healthcare professional, trained, academically trained, okay, all the papers, yes, it was not why I went to him, but he was not, you cannot claim that he didn't know his craft. And this person who's using astral projection, who's using things both for good and for not good. When I was asserting my boundaries and I was downright addressing things and understanding I will not stay silent about this, he literally said, they don't know what's energy, in the sense that nobody will believe you, okay? Kind of like Amber Heard to Johnny Depp, except I was the Johnny Depp in this case. And so the thing is that when something is practiced using something that, if you don't know the science, if you don't have convention around this dogma or around this way of viewing reality, you basically are not able to discuss your experience, good or bad, And of course, this usually comes out to experience that counters some ideology or some agenda. In Israel, in that case, 7th of October was planned. Whatever you think about 7th of October, there are also insiders that knew about this. And it is also inclusive of energy and psychic, not just spine, but psychic attacks. Psyop as psychic attack. If you're in Maui, perhaps you can confirm that you've also been to this. If you're in Congo, this would be interesting to hear from you. I know a lot of things happening in Africa with the fluoridization of the water. So some of them might be building A-bombs. And that might explain certain relations with NATO and certain adherences to other, type of alliances and associations. If you're in Ukraine or Russia, Eritrea, Sudan. Okay, so some of you may confirm. So, of course, if it is not acceptable scientifically to say that there is such a thing, of course, this is one technique that is under the radar. It's difficult to litigate, and it's also difficult to talk about, and it's even difficult to heal. So it's become a lethal. Okay. This is why I'm very activist against the silencing of the veterans, whether it's the atomic veterans, the 73 veterans, the 2023 veterans, around the oil crises that happened. And we are heading towards an eclipse involving Chiron. So this is 50 years timestamp for things that they might try to conceal, or also addressing this very type of events, because speaking up is a part of healing. This is the raison d'etre behind talk therapy. And when you have outer planet involved, this is my astrological contribution. It's not about writing to your notebook. Okay, it's something you do sometimes even publicly. And so we understand that there is good basis to think that other things than science infiltrate science. Science also has to be funded. For example, in the very department that I was studying, the only researchers that would get to Q1s, which is peer-reviewed, top-ranking scientific journals, and you have to get into scientific journals. You have to, in order to keep your job as a researcher when you finish your degrees and you just work as researcher. And the only people who would manage to do that with politics and governments would be people who would look into voting patterns. Okay, one of the geniuses that we had around was, I think by now he's professor. Maybe he was recalling that. And he was looking, by the way, his name is Galarielli, so it's a different Galarielli. And he was looking into identity and the relation between identity and voting patterns. So genius researcher. I learned so much from him. But you also need to understand that you could not have research founded. If you wonder why I say genius, identity is the core of a psyche. When somebody interferes with your identity, they basically is manipulating you to do stuff. Of course, enter politics here, right? So it is genius to uncover these relations and make them widely known to the public. I know even more about this than he knows that I know from colleagues. It's good things, it's not bad things, but they're involving also somebody that is now in the heart of child trafficking, global child trafficking ring issue that I hope will be more and more exposed actually in Israel. Yes, this happens also in Israel. It's not exempt from this. So absolutely we have other things than science. Now I want to address the issue of occult, and I touched on this a bit with They Don't Know It's Energy. We have to understand that many people, as they enter academic society, this is a gateway to entering occult. And this is very funny because of the way academia poses itself and presents itself. And we would see various diversions of faculties of knowledge where the spirituality and science becoming unified and severed. Okay, this is where I come into the picture. Okay, unified and severed according to practical agenda. Okay, and so you know that I am really giving reverence to the philosophy of pragmatism when it comes to just philosophy, but also scientific philosophy, and exploring the implications of a belief. That being said, pragmatism, like many philosophies, could also be tied into what we would say spiritual warfare, but it's basically also scientific warfare. And this is where the implications of a belief are not compatible with certain agendas. And you find that these agendas also in occult is not because the people who do this are followers of some faith. And I believe that while radical religion and fundamentalism that exists in all religions and even indigenous communities, I'm a great advocate for biodiversity and willing consent even amongst indigenous communities, as I believe this is the key to unlock gates to abolish any type of colonialism and apartheid, regardless of yes, the type. Um, White people were enslaved in Africa, black people were enslaved in the United States. Medical experiments were done on Palestinians, also involving people that were infiltrated into the Israeli regime, and this is in the most benevolent credit. But also, Israelis are today kidnapped and perform medical warfare. It's not experiments. Experiments is when you don't know the result. Okay, so medical warfare, kidnapping people, kidnapping women, kidnapping children, and it's done by Palestinians as well. Okay, so Palestinian doctors. Palestinian doctors were not just killed in Shiva for no reason. Some of them were killed for no reason. Some of them were taking parts in kidnapping and doing such things. So there are a lot of interests involved. There are also globalist interests involved. Okay, WHO is a health world organization that was involved in the fiasco of Pfizer, for example. So what level of involvement? We don't know, but to make decisions for countries around policy and locking people down and all these things is in no way purely scientific or purely medical. And this is where academia gets into it. Because academic research is funded and there is only certain type of research that you can get at a certain level of time. Okay, and this has pragmatic implications if your research is touching on. Let's give a local example. I'm from Israel. Up until 1973, which was the oil crisis, you could not write a bad word about Israel and research. Everything would immediately be removed. You could not get a research that criticizes Israel for good and for bad. You could not do this. After the oil crisis and the embargo on the West, it became possible. And so all the dirt came out, both criticism, that every country has something to criticize on. Israel is not exempt from that. And, the rest of the residues that were still there since the time of the Second World War and way been centuries before. So it was just a political situation where before the embargo, the oil embargo, you could not say a bad word about Israel. After the oil embargo, you could spill your gut. Okay, so this actually gave stage both to silenced veterans. A lot of the radical leftists in Israel are silenced veterans, which is why I say don't silence the veterans, let them heal. Otherwise, they become radically against the system. But if they actually have a point, then this should be, yes, addressed, right? The army service is mandatory. And if they disobey illegal order, this sent to forced hospitalization, given lethal medication that are also given to the common people, like beta blockers. This is not just practiced in Israel, very likely so. And this is how the medical field can become a medical warfare field, so much so that the cancer patient wouldn't know that there are researches where pills were given that would causing full remission, almost full remission, in terminally ill patients in cancer, and suddenly the budget dropped. This is not something I read about somewhere, okay? This is me teaching a German class to a family doctor who had a colleague that was doing this research, okay? That is how I encountered this information. That is how it came about to me when I was working on my thesis proposal, and I was called to look at cancer. And mind you, I was not doing it in a medical department. I was doing it as a part of philosophy of science department, and so I was staying humble. And I was like, why am I called to look at one of the highest death causes? Like, I wasn't going to Hebrews place, and then I just teach somebody private lessons, and she knows a colleague that's what's up. And I get this from doctors, okay? I get this from the medical people, I get this from the people that are silenced, and you understand the difficulty in getting them to be exposed. And this is where another thing comes into view. When we have war involved with science, it's very difficult to get people to speak, for obvious reasons. And those things are challenges on the way of you getting, even in time of peace, getting the correct treatment and correct diagnosis to your medical issue. Okay, so this is just one thing. Of course, it infiltrates science as well, because you need to base your practice and policy on something that is grounded. Of course, it reaches physics as well, and this is where occult come into play. As you embark on academia, many people join fraternities, which basically means they join occultist societies. Okay? There's nothing good or bad about occultist societies, but it's the fact that it's through these societies and not through academic research that you are led into other key positions and get to know people. And I don't need to emphasize the importance of connections, even when you do make science. I would not know about Peter R. de Vries if not for some person that, that I got to know in academia. It was very intricate and very complicated dynamic. But he was the person who told me, hey, you need to meet this person. He was doing that psychically. Okay? This is not me encountering information. Also, I noticed in academia that I was asking certain questions and information would come to me, so that the way we're told that we're making science is really not true. And when you read about people, this is why I had videos like channeling, doing science like Da Vinci, discussing Feynman taking psychedelics to enhance dream state and imagination, and the discussion of Einstein and imagination. Okay, it's whether do they let you do a thought experiment or do they not? Okay, and so in my time, people said, well, who's gonna let you do a thought experiment? So I'm gonna do a thought experiment, whether in academia or outside of it. That's just that. Okay, it's not why I left academia. I was a Me Too veteran, just for my own well-being. I took a break, but this is also the understanding that it's both the fact that you need to tie into certain type of societies, and what is occult? Occult is about practicing for, let's take Freemasons, for example, okay? Just the closest example, up until university, all I knew about Freemasons was, this is the Enlightenment people. Oh, all the cool Enlightenment people were there. I really want to join in. And because you have to keep secret, then I did not join. Not a secretive person. For my own personal story, it's just so. And one of the things that I learned is that in order to join, at least where the lodges that were available there, that also were inclusive of women, you had to give a statement that you believe in one of the three monotheistic religions. Okay, it doesn't have to be a particular type of religion, as long as it is Abrahamic religion. And later I would also find out that they also accepted Hinduism. But you have to be a believer. Okay, you have to say, I believe in one of these three religions. So otherwise you could not be a Mason in these local lodges, at least that I was exposed to. Okay, I don't have any more insider information because I didn't join the lodges. I'm not a secretive person, and you would be asked to keep everything secret. Actually, a friend of mine had a friend that was Mason, and he kind of looked into the books, and he was checking, basically fishing up the books and kind of looking at what are those weird rituals that they're doing, and seeing that like every step you have a rituals, you have things you have to do. But of course, it's not just by the books, you're indoctrinated. The more high levels of any society doesn't necessarily have to do with the cult. There's nothing good or bad about a cult. You can practice a cult and do it benefically. You can practice a cult and do it off. Okay, but the higher up the rank, then in order to trust you, they need you to do things, and some of them it's illegal, and this is how you get people to suddenly turn to the other side. It's just that you will not get higher up the rank. It's not about even selling your soul. It's about literally committing crimes, so that they can extort you. And this is how you see how a very controlled exposure of even Peter rings, okay, whether it's the Epstein case, the Tate case, the P. Diddy case that we recently had, R. Kelly before that. Those who grew up on songs like "To Satisfy You" were having a moment yesterday. So this is, of course, this affected our entire generation, the sexuality of entire generations, right? And these things are also infiltrating towards science, because you basically did not leave the church. An academic institution is the structure of patriarchal church. It's just the same structure. That's why one of the things I was saying around the Me Too is that if we do not have decentralization in the academia and we require our politicians to be academic, then we will not have decentralization and we will not have democracy, because academia is not a democratic institution. If people don't practice democracy, they don't know how to do this. Just how is people don't practice will and consent, they don't know how to do this. Yes, we have generations of people who could be, I'm almost 40, that could be my father, and in terms of their age and generation, and they might be virgins in will and consent. Doesn't mean that they're evil or that they're necessarily like, vile. It's just like they don't even know how to do this. Okay, in their generation, somebody would take you to a prostitute and this would be your first time. So you would have trauma, she would perpetuate some trauma, very likely, and this was your you're losing your virginity. Or you would go to the girl that gives, which basically means she's not in an agency position towards this situation. She doesn't understand what's really going on, and this is the girl that you would sleep with, because here you can lose your virginity. Okay, so many people have tremendous traumas around this, and they're virgin when it comes to willing consent. Okay, it's only my generation, the Scorpio generation, and that began to talk about like how to willing consent in sex, in bed. Okay, and so that is fairly recent. It's never been done in modern society. Okay, if people had willing consent, it was by chance, rather than by the social construct that they were living in, or by the sexual education that they were receiving, if any at all. Okay, it's just like, what's their sexual education? Wear a condom, take the pill. Okay, that's pretty much, it's not important, although we think differently about the pills now, even scientifically. But this is also how those things affect our society, and infiltrate our science and bias our scientific view. And also, when it comes to money changing hands, if your research doesn't get budgeted and this topic doesn't get budgeted, chaos theory is a great example. Chaos theory did not get budgeted in the 60s, in the 70s, because it seemed too complicated. And even when Feynman was presenting his information about the patterns of light and the probability, when he was bringing probability to physics, people are like, he said, I can't make it more simple for you. I've been observing this, and this is what I saw. How involved is occult around this? I don't know. I know he went to fraternity. We wouldn't hear of any one of them if they were not a part of fraternity. What's good about Feynman is that he did talk about cult-like sciences, in the sense that sometimes, well, not everything that looks like a research is a research. But again, this was with the given context of time. Today, it is true also to physics, also to medicine, and so on and so forth. But also, there is genuinely a discussion about how do we know that we know? Okay, and if people use imagination, do thought experiments, and this guides them in a certain way to look at certain things that give confirmation bias, and then you would have the refutability. But when you are looking at, let's say, the clair science, okay, far seeing, far hearing, kind of like the psychic spies of the science, but also the psychic connection of the sciences, then this is a sense. And when you test the sense, it's kind of like if you give something to smell. If you get something to smell and you test your sense of smell, you cannot repeatedly do that. So there's challenges to doing this in the scientific method. It doesn't mean that you cannot learn about it. You have to be more relaxed in your epistemic standards, but you also have to be more relaxed about the implication from what you learned. Okay? And this is also pertaining to energy and psychic information. So the way that occult gets into the mix is simply there are hidden interests, ideologies, and downright strategies, which means it's built around resources that would gatekeep and would artificially promote certain scientific discourse. We cannot ignore that this exists. Also, very much like a person I absolutely admire, Professor Galerielli of our university, okay, that Galerielli. The way to deal with that, one of the ways to deal with that, is to get at the truth of the science, to really be inquisitive and curious and ask yourself questions and argue with science. It's not going to always be available. Sometimes they're going to cut your research and they wouldn't say why, like in the case of life-saving, non-torturous cancer treatment to terminally ill people. And sometimes things be like that. That being said, for your own sanity, it's you really asking the questions. Okay, I can say even about a simple thing that I ask simple questions. I discovered information. Okay, when I was right now, I'll be having row in my second house, which means making money, but by my own skill. And I was also learning about like how to invest this money, how to grow wealth, and I was learning how people would put. Good example is the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. You were told that you would have to put things into the trust and take loans from the bank, but you were not told, you were told that you would have to take loans from the bank. You were not told that you would put these things into a trust. So you don't take the loans on your name. You were taught to take the loans on your name. These guys, they don't take the loans on their name. And so they are basically blockaded from being persecuted if something goes off. And so this is even worse than the 2008 crisis, because 2008 we had business people, even in Israel, reaching out to their deep pockets like Lev Leviev and paying their debts, okay, which would be considered like a noble thing to do, like if you wouldn't expect them to, because they're being covered up for. And so we are the funders, okay? And so what I understood is that some business people were putting their own loans and their own assets to a trust. And I was like, what's a trust? Okay, I worked for a credit card company. I literally had to leave because I was not okay with not giving people the correct information or having all kinds of tricks where like, oh, now I'm setting your monthly payment to 4,000 shekels. And then, they buy in 6,000 shekels and they have plus prime, 7% plus prime interest on 2,000. Think about it as $2,000 if you're American every month, and they're not even. Why? Because they're not supposed to remember this. It's a psyop. They're not supposed to remember that the person they talked to and set this card told them that, but it's recorded that they said that. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. And we're not talking about 4,000, we're talking about 400. So think about the person buying $4,000 and only being charged $400, and the rest is in a plus prime interest. And then there is a recording of somebody who's very quickly saying, yeah, I'm setting your to 400 shekels, and it's recorded. They can't do anything legally. Okay, this is a psyop. This is a psyop. So how come you have trust? Okay, so how come people with big money have trusts? And what is a trust? You basically put it on the trust name. You're just supposed to have trust with the trust because nothing is on your name. By the way, Switzerland confiscated a lot of stuff from both Nazis and Jews in this way, and still does it till today, because it would like, we will hide your money from taxes. You would do it for people do it for tax evasion. We will hide your money, and then they come for the money, and they're like, what money? Okay, so this Switzerland is known to get rich just in this way. And then you ask, how do people trust the how come where does the word trust belong in business, the way business was practiced up until now? Okay, what trust? And when you find out what is the trust, you go to these secret societies and these unfortunately also occult societies. Nothing good or bad about occult, it's just the structure of those secret societies. And the higher up the rank, the more resources go through your hands as decision maker. The point is to the decision maker. It's not about holding. Okay, you're not the storage of the wealth. You're the person who makes the decision about the change of goods and resources. Okay, that's what it's about. This is why you need the trust. Was basically the storage of the wealth. They write it on their name. They write it like they made the decision and it belongs to them, but it's actually belonging to you. People do it for tax evasion, but people also do it for, let's say you ordered a war because of there is some oil somewhere. Okay, wouldn't it be so much nicer to say, well, this government did that? And we're like chasing the governments and chasing our presidents and chasing our parliament members, and they don't make the decisions. So where do the people who live that make the decision? Well, bunkers. So we have names of companies that make bunkers. We have bunkers all around, like Europe and United States, so probably also in the Middle East. So get the bunkers. This is where the people would sit and make the decisions. And so that's your man. Okay, it's not the politician that is there to entertain you, basically. And they might not even have a bunker. Okay, most politicians are just running for their life most of their lives, or dealing with like sage-like qualities to deal with life threats. Just most politicians, whether you right wing, left wing, it's just so. Especially in the age of personal politics and celebrity politics, which is our age. This is how we get it. The person is the party. This is personal politics. And this is simply what works. Okay, if you needed to market yourself, or if you needed to have a campaign, you would not be able to do that in a decentralized fashion during at least Pluto and Capricorn. And even a little bit before that, even during Pluto and Sag, it already began to be personal politics. So we, the people, are the ones who vote. Okay, if we would promote a decentralized party, that would be the trend. Okay, but then you can say, what about the votes, and what about the voting engineering? And I say, yes, absolutely, there is a desire to make this so. And then you get expendable children that are being distrust card, which necessitates kidnapping children, not even registering births, and so on and so forth. And you know the story: if you tolerate this, your children will be next. Or all it takes for evil to win is for good people to do nothing. If you see a stray child and you call the authorities and you don't see the child anymore, um, it tells you nothing unless we, the people, gather around these authorities and say, we ask to see the child, we ask to see that the child is okay, we ask to follow up this. One person that did this about cold cases, so after the people were dead, is no longer with us when he began to address organized crime. Okay, so he was solving case by case, but then when he began to address organized crime, that was when he is no longer with us. This bit are the freeze. And so another way to treat to that is to radical ideology, okay, a radical religion or radical ideology that supports child trafficking, okay, kind of like what's being done with radical Islam. And say what you want about people like Mr. Geert Wilders in Netherlands. He's been spending decades under life threats. And so, of course, he had the police working effectively to back it up, which the Freeze didn't have. But he's also addressing the issue of radical religion that also supports child trafficking. So it's tending to one branch of this type of trafficking. And so this is one venue through which children can be kidnapped. What is done with these children? Then you can listen to Anke's testimony. And she survived the project of expandable children in Europe. Okay, it's not just MK Ultra. MK Ultra exists. It's not just MK Ultra, and she survived this. And basically, she was horribly abused, and then was taken to was trained to basically deliver information about politicians, and and she was considered expendable child, so it was allowed to kill her, and she was sold to this project by the family. So those children are basically used, and so the politician would sleep with the child. The child would, in some cases, would get him to talk. They would get information, but also to have record of this person sleeping with the child. And then, of course, whenever he's fit, whenever it's good for that child, that this politician could be exposed. And of course, he slept with the child. Oh my God, what an atrocity! Boom, it's all done. Okay, but you see the very ridicule and the cynicism around this. It's not that they care about the very people who expose this are the very people associated with the praxis of expandable children. Okay, for the sake of these children, we need to know this structure. This is how people begin to trust, because if you slept with some child and you don't want to be exposed, I can trust you to write everything, all of my assets on your name and not fuck with that, because I can expose you like this and you'll spend a lifetime in prison for these offenses. So if you didn't sleep with children, I cannot trust you. That's how it works. That is trust. I would not know this if I would not look at things like, how do you invest, how do you preserve wealth, and how do you withstand inflation, and so on and so forth. Kind of like the rich dad, poor dad. Oh, I want to get educated about finance. And I just ask an innocent question, a child question. What's trust? How do you get the word trust in business? This is what they talk about when they talk about trust. It's various levels of offenses, and of course, when you get higher up the rank, if you're a public figure, or if you have a lot of decisions that you are making, then, or that you are the image to be made, so the people maybe run these trusts as well, so it's kind of like hidden wealth as well, then the higher the offense you have to commit to be a part of the ring. Okay, and so this does not skip academia, this does not skip science, this does not skip your doctors, your psychologist, your psychiatrist. In some cases, even so much so that the family doctor, this would begin to be in COVID. If you're not in par with Pfizer, and this is regardless of what you think about vaccines or what you think about, if you're not in par with this particular practice, you were no longer employed. As simple as that. And you would get, I got a family doctor for 10 years that I recommended her whenever it was like to get, worker of the year or something like that, employer of the year. And if a 10 years old relationship, decade old relationship with the family doctor, even more than a decade, had to come to a halt when she was like, how do you know this is from the pill? And I'm like, I know this question from another type of medical field, and I know what's going on right now, so this is goodbye. Okay, I didn't say it in those very words, but this was exactly the spirit. Yes, because I was tending to my well-being before that, then I knew it from other fields of the medical profession. So this is something that we have to take into account. But the power of asking innocent questions and receiving information and seeing when people quaver, whether you are asking this, whether you're asking your rabbi or your doctor or your priest or your imam, people tend to squirm and not really know. Or sometimes people will genuinely tell you, I don't know. Okay, I don't know. And sometimes people genuinely tell you, I don't know. Which is science, okay? It's just a part of the questioning and a part of the fact that you genuinely don't know everything. But sometimes people start to squirm at you, people start to give you arguments that are not scientific, that don't have, this cannot be from the pill. This must be from your trauma, not from the pill. It's like, okay, let's try to reduce the pill, to take away the pill. And you see me, I'm coming to checkups with you. Let's see how I feel if we take this off. No, we cannot do this. You cannot stay here if you don't take the pill. I can do nothing for you. So I can only be here if I can take this pill, which I say is causing me side effects that are not desired, and you're telling me it's not from the pill. And I cannot receive medical aid if this is not good for me, and I want to try to take this down and see what happens and just be here, I don't know, do yoga classes or whatnot, and see if I get better or process this in the safe environment. No, you cannot. Okay, then probably I'm not getting medicine in this pill, right? If you didn't have to force it on me, then it probably would be more medical, right? But if you are trying to force something on me and I tell you, I don't feel well with this, and you say, no, it cannot be from this, I say, okay, let's try to reduce this and see if it is from this. This is how science works. This is how research works. This is how an experiment works. And you cannot do this. You are not allowed to do this, and you would not be allowed to keep me in a framework of receiving medical care if you would not adhere to giving me things that I tell you are not good for me. And you're not allowed to take them away and see how I feel without this. This isn't, we're not in Kansas anymore. This is a deep down rabbit hole of something that is not science, is not medicine, is definitely no place in a place where sovereignty and autonomy is celebrated, and is definitely as no place in democracy. So that's what's up, okay? And so if we address these things and we ask the questions, then we can challenge the narrative. You might not be able to do this right just yet, but at least you know that there is a gap between what this other person is telling you, and put in religion, science, tradition, also the argument of indigenous communities. Darling, if your community is supporting child brides and kills people if they marry someone from another tribe, you're shouting indigenous communities is not valid. It's not a valid argument. It's not your culture. To kill children is not your culture. Child trafficking, expendable, is not your culture. It's not some hidden magical argument that we can hide the projects of expendable children with, so that they will be used for trust cards. And then you're like, we oppose colonialism. Okay, what is your culture? Well, what about child rights? Well, we were not there. Well, I spoke to the women. You're there. We're, this is our land 9 millennia ago. We're like, okay, how do you treat your own people on this land? Perhaps let's take a look at this. Perhaps this can help you to go out of this colonialist perpetuating stories for your people. Okay, let's do the Mandela thing. This is how Mandela, abolished apartheid. He looked at those things. He voted for bloodline segregation to make the regime more decentralized, and to learn from what the newcomers had to teach, the colonizer had to teach, but to support the sovereignty by genuinely changing things within the society that were a match to bloodline segregation, which is apartheid. Okay, if you have bloodline segregation between tribes, of course you'll be having apartheids. Time and time again, if you kill women in honor killings, of course men will begin to be murdered by the hundreds. This is happening in Bedouin society in Israel, not Palestine, not Gaza. The people that are bombed first when they drop bombs from Gaza, they bombed before the Jewish cities. Okay, this is happening. And I had some, men telling me, no, there's no, like, I'm speaking with Bedouin women, darling. If I know your society more than you do, the problems, the challenges of your society, and these women know this and you don't, you see we're not there anymore. Whereas in academia, I did meet a person, it's not Bedouin, Druze, and I was very shocked. There was an organization called Lava, which was basically going against and demonstrating with mixed couples, where like a Jewish woman would marry an Arab man, and they were against this. And so I was very shocked at what they would do, their threats, their demonstrations. And then this Druze person looked at me dead in the eye, and he said to me, in our society, a woman marries a man from another tribe, we kill her. And I'm like, okay, so how can I speak about lava when this is practiced in Arab society? And by the way, his research was about more Druze people defining themselves as Palestinians. Okay, so is that Palestinians? Okay, like, speak up. But also, when such things such as castration of people or medical welfare or the Pfizer fiasco are practiced in Israel, we were led to the 7th of October. And this is something that it's about we the people. It's not about nationality, it's not about flag, it's not about indigenous communities. It's about how do we look at leaders that abolished, whether it's colonialism or oppression, like Nelson Mandela, who was a friend of Israel, okay, and do the Nelson Mandela thing, okay? What would Nelson Mandela do? Nelson Mandela would ask himself, just like a shaman, what is going on within society that could have been given a match to such behavior from our enemy, okay? How are women treated in Israel when they are in threat of domestic violence? Not well, not well. How are women treated, men and women treated when they are in threat of sexual violence? Not well. Are women believed when they speak about violence that they see? Not well. Are women threatened not to speak about what they see if it's a national threat? Yes, this is what happened to the watchers, the women watchers before 7th of October. Absolutely. Is this coming from Israel or outside of Israel? Outside of Israel. Is it the Zionist regime? No, not necessarily. Is it something more global and beyond religion and beyond nationality and beyond indigenous communities? Yes, yes. It's resources. Maybe something to do with oil crisis, probably. Maybe something to do with the desire to have less people so that it will be easier to make peace agreements around resources between those who have the wealth. Do we need more expendable children now that we have so many more politicians? Absolutely, yes. Is it more easy to nuke a city than to nuke a village? Let's start asking the questions. So, and one more thing that I want to quote, and this is omens that arrive. Okay, so I'm a great follower of Richard Feynman, and I really loved to listen to him. He's a very great entertainer, and by the way, he learned how to speak in the occult. But he was also a whistleblower, which people don't talk about. Okay, it's in our face, and we don't talk about. Two things he said. He was sitting in Caltech with, people who studied in other faculties like medical development, and he was saying, I see the best of doctors coming up with cures to diseases that you didn't think you could cure. And at the same time, I see other teams of medical people working on the next ailments or viruses that nobody will be able to cure. Okay, this is a man who's teaching in Caltech, who's hard science, physicist, mathematician, but known as physicist, Nobel Award Prize winner, and was just sitting and talking with people who did the research. Okay, kind of like the insider note. And another thing he talked about, other than occult like sciences, is why do people have this ceremony where they brush their teeth every day? And I was like, but what does he want from teeth brushing? I genuinely didn't get it. Again, he worked for the Manhattan Project. And he said, people look at, teeth brushing. Who says it's healthy to brush your teeth? Who says it's healthy? Do you look at the science? Not everything that looks like a science is a science. You have to ask the questions. He couldn't say more, darlings. But what we brush our teeth with is those pastes that they include fluoride in. Okay, and right before I haven't even done my oil pulling today yet. Okay, I just opened the camera right before my oil pulling practice. And what we brush our teeth with is basically this thing called fluoride, and this fluoride is a byproduct of industrialized society that at the time of Manhattan Project was saying, oh, we need that for the bomb. So it's good to build A-bombs. Okay, but then after Manhattan Project, they just put it in the water, put it in this, and so what are we going to do about it? So we're going to say that it's healthy for your teeth, and then we're going to overdose the dosage that is healthy for your teeth. And that's what you brush your teeth. This is why our teeth are so, we're in Western society, developed society, you have medical care, you can save a person can have an amputated limb and have implants where they can speak, you can have things that read your thoughts, technology that reads your thoughts, and you're able to communicate with people even if you cannot speak. Okay, we have all this magic and we have bad teeth. How come? Okay, and so that's a story. Now, when you see defluoridization of the water, you understand that this is not a gift to humanity. It's not that suddenly they decided scientifically that fluoride is bad for you and they didn't know it before. It's that just like at the time of Feynman, it was a byproduct of industrialized society. And when there is a Manhattan Project where they built an A-bomb, they needed this, so they collect the fluoride. Now, of course, it's a green project to defluoridize the water. Everybody wants clear water, right? If you Google where they defluoridize the water and when governments do this, where they're collecting fluoride to build A-bombs. And what countries are involved with this. So if not for people like Richard Feynman and people who make these weird conspiracy videos on YouTube, I would not be able to deliver this information to you. Okay? In the past, you needed people like Van Nunen to sit 18 years in jail because he wanted to denucleify the region, so he leaked information about the local nuke of Israel. Okay? John Crossman spent 18 years in jail. He was working for the atomic project, okay, atomic development project. Today, you're just like, who picks up the fluoride nowadays? Okay, we have this ability today. And this is happening when we are asking the questions. when we are tending to things and even tending to our body and asking questions about, not just, well, the doctor tells you something. Okay, I literally wrote a dentist that I want to have private payment for the treatment, because for the treatment for just clearing my teeth, because he's treating other people sometimes for free. And I said, this is very lovely. I would want to pay you privately if possible, if it is. And I did not get a reply for him. And I thought, why did he not reply me? Oh, because I was publicly writing about, free fluoride. And I was like, okay, I'll have to find another dentist then. Um, so I was just there wanting to support him and his project, and for him to be able to treat people with no money. And all I needed was just like to clean my teeth. It's not much. And this was like, why is he not replying me? This is so very strange. And that probably has to do with the fact that I exposed the things about fluoride. And so it tells you which is which. So I know that this may be a kind person when it comes to treating people for free. Is not a person that is exempt from the fluoride use. And so I would need to pick a dentist that does it differently, or find other solutions. This is the time that we are at, okay? And I've been trying to tend to my teeth like since Uranus was scoring Saturn. It's just like, I just need to clean my teeth professionally. So that's what's up. By the way, you probably don't want to scale your teeth yourself, because because it is basically difficult to get to the angles that don't hurt your gums. Okay, so just like you probably don't want to avoid this if you can. Just saying. So I'm not promoting teeth care that could be that is self-harm, but I'm also not promoting going to doctors that adhere to certain policies that are not necessarily beneficial for your teeth on the long run. So I am going to finish up with this, and I hope you got the message of how all these things tie up, but also how just asking questions and being genuinely curious, not accepting every answer, but looking deeply into things can assist you in at least knowing that this is not science. At the age of Pluto and Aquarius, more and more people will begin to do that. More and more people care to look in science, to ask questions, and to reach informations. And so you're already beginning to see how that is being used for certain agendas that use the word colonialism. And they can be good agendas and they can be not good agendas. But if you know about the topic, then at large, and you have a wider scope for a wider cases that are exposed, you understand that just like, you would have now Epstein or P. Diddy exposed for child trafficking, and this would be feeling like a great revelation. You didn't know this before. So the same thing you have, oh, this place was colonized or that place was colonized. Yes, we absolutely need to expose this and to talk about this, but we don't want to stop there. We definitely don't want to let it take a hold of the discourse in a way that perpetuates the problem. Okay, if we're only looking for the person who is exposed and only taking down the heads of these people that are being basically extorted with these trust cards that is exploiting children, we are not tending to the people who kidnap the children, use them and train them by torturing them. And they can be used for extortion. They can also be used for guerrilla. They could also end up in ISIS-like organizations. Okay, and ISIS is one study case, and so we need to address the problem. Just like Dr. Fatima said in her discourse, we need to start thinking about solutions, because it is that deep. We really need to even start thinking about solutions for those type of stuff. And they pretend to our resources. Even when we talk about fundamentalist religion, if you're Moroccan but not Berber in Netherlands, you will not get housing. Perhaps you will get a food voucher if you join volunteering. Now, this volunteering can be, giving food to people who need that, which can be lovely. But this volunteering can absolutely be let's have this or that demonstration, which you may or may not agree upon, but your food voucher depends on. So we also want to understand that. And if we helped this non-Berber Moroccan to get housing independent of being a part of some tribe or radical religion, then we would have at least tended to the right to exit. But of course, I do not expect a person whose relationship with the authorities is such that they are working in his favor, and even life-saving, and allowing him to speak about what people don't speak about. I don't expect such a person to be able to understand or even be exposed to, definitely not tend to, where, for example, the police would put ultimatum for you or tell you that the shelter is 40-minute walk when it is 40 minutes drive. It's just people are people, and everybody has their own experiences also with authorities. But when we want to turn to systematic injustice, it's up to we the people. We cannot expect a politician to do this. The lives of the politician depend on being protected from life threats by those very organizations that, to the marginalized of the refugees, the marginalized of the local society, would behave in a way that leaves them either at the fundamentalist religion to get a food voucher, or at the organized crime, again, to get fed. So this is something Peter R. de Vries was closer to tending to, and he is no longer with us. And the police did give him ultimatum of full protection or no protection. Full protection would not allow him to broadcast from the court, and he was assisting a state witness to bring down a case of, in this case, Moroccan mafia. Okay, it's an organized, a study case of an organized crime organization. Okay, when I was staying in a shelter, there was a Moroccan woman who was not Berber, and she did not get housed. It was an elderly woman. She was even sexually harassed, and she would be left in the street. Netherlands government did nothing to provide her with a solution. It's not difficult. She's one person. She's not a tribe. She's not going to demonstrate in your government. She's not going to do all these fundamentalistic things that you're afraid of. She's not going to grope women. She's not going to rob you. She's just going to live her life. She was not helped. She was put in the street. But those people that are going to gather up and mob up and try to de-democratize the entire country, they were receiving assistance by the hundreds. And it's not about, I'm for housing first, but this is also something we need to speak about. Tribalism, that unfortunately is a great feature of indigenous societies by and large, is leading to terror, colonialism, apartheid, and genocide and democide. Stand with biodiversity. Housing first. The right to exit. Okay? So, yeah, some astrology for today. This is a soul day, so I'm going to call upon Apollo. And the upright swastika. The upright swastika is the inverted direction to the direction of the Nazi swastika, and it's upright. And this is also associated with many practices and religions. One of them is Apollo, who was opposing tyrants and tyranny, and Apollo was punishing tyranny. So this is a good day to call on Apollo for punishing tyranny. I'm very, very grateful and in great reverence for both Lada Duncheva and Rumen Kolev for bringing this information. Rumen Kolev also makes talismans with the swastika of Apollo and other deities and planets. It's very, very expensive. Prepare your wallets. This is a lifetime investment, because he does take like ancient coins and turns them into the talismans. Very beautiful art. So you might want to watch those videos in his collection through Lada Duncheva's channel. Not getting dividends from that. I would be very open to get dividends from that, but I don't currently get dividends. But it's just something that I enjoy. So we can call upon Apollo to ask to protect us from tyranny and to enforce our sovereignty. So have a lovely soul day. Bye-bye.